This is Goals with Soul, the podcast for visionary coaches and entrepreneurs, building your business with inspired action. In alignment with your mission and authentic message, so you can create impact for your soul clients and feel lit up every day. I'm your host, Jo Ingram, married mum of 3 daughters from London and a former ad agency director turned business coach and strategist. In Goals with Soul, we blend revenue generation with energetics, marketing strategies with pranic healing, and ambitious business goals with our soul's desires. If you're looking to build your business with less efforting and more ease, this is the podcast for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to Goals with Soul. I'm Joanna Ingram, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking to Rose Radford, who this year made her first £1 million cash in her business. But it's not just about the money. What Rose has to share with us today, it goes real deep about how we show up in our businesses and what success is really about. And inviting Rose on to Goals with Soul was a very easy decision for me. Rose has been a personal coach of mine for the best part of this year and a very big influence about getting in the room with people that are going to inspire you to your next level. Rose is the creator of the Millionaire Girl Next Door brand and is a former McKinsey consultant turned digital CEO. She's an award-winning industry coach and also the host of the Grow to CEO podcast. She's spoken on the TEDx stage and has been featured in Forbes and US News, among others. You're going to hear later how she has built her 7-figure location-independent business in a few short years. Rose is known in the industry as the Evergreen Queen, and she helps coaches to scale their business with ease and with confidence, never compromising on the really high standards of delivery. She's an absolute inspiration for so many reasons. And today on the interview, you're going to hear how Rose scaled her business to £1 million before the age of 30, the Evergreen model she teaches that allows coaches to scale with ease, the importance of mindset and energy work and how that has made a direct contribution to the massive leap forward Rose has made this year. And Rose shares a little about her astonishing year, including getting married and masterminding on Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson. Let's dive in.
And welcome to Goals with Soul, Rose.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. This is my complete honor. I'm so excited to be doing this interview because I've been in your world for, getting on for a year now. And some of what you say and what you do has made an indelible impact on how I show up in the business and the progression of, everything that I do. So to have you here, to be able to pick your brains and to share your gift with listeners today is something that I'm not going to squander a second. And the first question I'm going to ask you, and I know it's something you've been talking quite a lot about lately, is hitting 1 million this year, which is something that is an incredible achievement and not one to be taken lightly. So first, celebrating you and all that you do. Whoop, whoop. But tell us what that's been like. Tell us the journey and share a little bit of the insights along the way.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you again for having me on this gorgeous podcast. Been binge watching some of your previous episodes as well. It's been so fun to listen. So thank you. So the thing that's really significant for me about hitting this million in cash received in pounds in my business, just to make it really clear what that is, because I think people throw numbers around and we're not always clear what they mean. Let's be honest. The reason it's so significant for me is because I did it before I turned the age of 30. That was actually an intention that I set not that long ago, let's say probably a couple of years ago. And I set the intention, I completely forgot about it and then was reminded about it probably earlier in the year now. And I ended up digging out a sentence that I wrote for myself those few years ago. And it was actually a really soulful statement that I would love to share with your listeners right now, because I think it might inspire them a little bit.
Please do.
Because it is very soul-led, actually. So the sentence is this. It's a desire statement. And I wrote down, I desire £1 million by the time I turn 30 on the 13th of September, 2022, in return for being the messenger of the light and sharing my message as a business and wealth coach, which is what I was labeled at the time. In return for this money I coach women to create and manage financial overflow through growing successful businesses. I'm grateful to have received a plan by which to accumulate this money, and I'm following this plan I have received. I didn't know how I was going to do it at the time. If you can tell from that, right? no freaking clue. And this, honestly, I wrote this a good couple of years ago now, and then released it into the world, and then just kept taking steps forwards. And every time things became a block or a challenge, I just knew I had to find a way to smash down the wall or step over the hurdle, whatever it might be, and to just keep going and going and going. And then obviously those cumulative steps end up being the result that you intended eventually, one way or another. So that's why that goal is so meaningful to me ultimately.
That is so powerful. And I'm probably not the only one that's going to rewind at this point and just take a few notes on that one. So like, if you're doing that right now, you're not alone, because there's a lot in that statement about the value that you want to show up and give in return. Because it's so easy to just say, I just want to be like super rich. But in our industry as purpose-led soulpreneurs, it's more about the value we give and the impact we make. And of course, receiving that phenomenal income as a result. And I love that. That was, even at that early stage, a really big focus. And how did that unfold? Because we want the strategies, like we get it, the mindset. And I know, because we're going to touch on this shortly, how important the mindset has been for you particularly. But what paths did you follow that sent you off a little? And then what ultimately sent you in the right direction?
So for a long time, I was really struggling to get this thing going. And I say really struggling. To be fair, I was doing well financially, doing typically consistent 20K cash months. One way or another, I managed to make it work. The reason I found that really difficult at the time is because it wasn't clear what I was really delivering. My messaging was horrendously unclear. I was basically pigeonholed into an average business coach that didn't have anything unique about her, which was really frustrating because it didn't clearly show the value that I was bringing and could bring to clients. And I was coasting along at that, kind of feeling a bit invisible, to be honest. Like my best kept secret. And I imagine many of your listeners might be thinking that as well right now. They just don't know how to articulate what they do in a way that makes sense for them and for the audience to understand that and say, oh, I need to go work with Rose or with Joe because she does the thing that I need. So I was definitely stuck in that place for a long time. And the shift for me, there was many shifts along the way, but one of the first ones that really stands out for me, that I really remember, is when I finally went all in on Evergreen being my niche. And there was obviously also a lot of resistance. It sounded like it was really easy at the time, just go all in on this one thing. But there's also a lot of resistance to going really deep in a niche and saying, I'm going to fly the flag for this thing. I'm going to piss people off by doing that. I am going to worry about people not wanting to work with me because I'm so niched. All of that stuff that comes up that you probably come across in your clients, I imagine, Joe, as you're helping them clarify their messaging and their niche even more deeply than ever before. However, making that shift allowed me to really catapult forwards. And then we hit a 100K month within about 6 months after that or something like that. It was really rapid. Now, that's not to say it was all the niching. It was also some of the deeper trauma work and subconscious work I was doing at the time too. But the two together were like dynamite when it came to the growth of the business.
I mean, first of all, I love the way that you were very open about saying, despite earning 20K months, the messaging wasn't allowing you to get to the next level. And I mean, as you know about me, that's the area that I focus on so clearly. And seeing that a coach of your success at the time was still self-doubting and wondering how to differentiate and stand out in a niche was a large part an inspiration to me to help people of that level with the skills that I possess. So I thank you for that. But I'd also like to dive into the word evergreen before we move on, because I know when I first came into your world and you resonated with me, when I heard the word evergreen, I thought that meant low cost courses that I could stick on my website and sell for a couple of $100 and obviously be instantly rich overnight because I didn't need to do anything. It's passive income, easy peasy. I tried one in the past. Evergreen was definitely something that appealed to me in that context. But I know now that that is not the evergreen that you are queen of. So tell us a little bit more of your definition of evergreen.
I'm dying laughing right now because this is so true. It's one of the biggest limiting beliefs ever. I'm going to have to go live about this straight after this interview now because I'm so passionate about what you've just said. And it keeps people stuck. The reason I'm passionate about it is because it keeps people stuck and it stops them from going evergreen when it would really deeply serve them to do so. So my area of focus is really high ticket offers on Evergreen. And when we say high ticket, it's usually 3K and upwards, whether it's pounds or dollars, doesn't really matter. For some niches, high ticket can sometimes be near, let's say, the 2K mark, but usually it's 3K and upwards. You end up in high ticket land. And so I love to teach how you can sell high ticket offers on Evergreen year round, signing 1, 2, 3 clients a week. That's what it would look like. Rather than selling a $47 bundle on a sales page somewhere. Now, what actually happens is it's the same amount of effort to sell somebody into a program for $5K as it is to sell something for $50. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have the 5K sale. I'd rather help somebody more deeply as well through that 5K sale. So that's where the difference is really in what I teach. And the other thing here is if you have a small audience, which I know that I certainly started out with basically zero audience. And I know you were in a similar position because we both came from corporate. We weren't exactly hanging out on Instagram beforehand. And we have to start from scratch, which is fair enough. But when you are starting from scratch and you have a small audience, to make money quickly, it's got to be high ticket. But it doesn't mean that therefore you have to rely on launches. You can be selling clients into your programs all year round on Evergreen. So people don't always understand that there's a choice there. Because essentially Evergreen, if anybody's listening to this thinking, what the hell is Evergreen? I thought that was a type of plant or tree. It's not. It's also a type of marketing. And it's the opposite to launching. And so instead of launching all the time, obviously you can sign clients year round. And that allowed me, therefore, to create consistent income pretty quickly. It's not like I didn't launch. I did 9 launches before I realized that Evergreen was a much easier lifestyle and an easier business to run than relying on launches all of the time. So yeah, it's not just low cost stuff. It can be low cost if you've got a massive audience, but let's be honest, most people don't.
Yeah. And that's some of that messaging was what appealed to me so much because I'd been through the launch roller coaster and I'd experienced lows that I just didn't want to go back to. It was part of the original burnout that I fell into 6 months into my business because I was just pushing myself into this sort of launch habit that really wasn't aligned with my own personal energy as a human design reflector for those out there that are into that. But just about having a bit of a easier time of it with those highs and lows just evened out and being able to create consistency. And seeing that messaging was something that brought me into your world and into your pipeline and into your program, which then helped me create my first high ticket program, which was Time to Rise. And now I'm moving into my second program, which I'm super excited about, which is going to focus much more on messaging for more established coaches. Yeah. And so diving into that a little bit more deeply about Evergreen and the model that you teach, and I've been privileged to learn a lot about, what is it that so many coaches that are struggling right now will be able to just make a lot less effort and a lot more ease? You've mentioned obviously getting off the launch roller coaster, but I know there's so much more than that. And this business pushes us to the limit if we're not careful. So finding the right model earlier the better is going to be only beneficial for all of us as we're building our businesses, ideally to that £1 million point, which you've done so yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting, actually. I was on Necker Island a couple of weeks ago with Sir Richard Branson and about 40 other women entrepreneurs.
Just dropping that in. Just mention that. Yeah.
And just to really toot my own horn, I was the youngest female entrepreneur to be invited on that trip. I was like, yes, I can have that crown. Woo!
I mean, you have had a year that is absolutely unrivaled, and I'm going to ask you more about that, but I don't want to break your flow. God, tell me about Necker.
So there was a conversation we had at lunchtime, and I asked some of the women around me, what has been some of your best and worst decisions in your business so far? These are women that have already created millions, sometimes multi-millions, and they've been around the block for a little while. I wanted to know, what were some of those best decisions? And one of the ladies, who's actually one of your guests on this podcast, and I won't reveal it, because you've had many, but I'll tell you afterwards once we start recording. She said to me that the best decision for her was creating a high ticket evergreen group coaching program. And I was like, interesting. That's a bit of content there for me. And she said that's ultimately allowed her to catapult her business forwards. And I said to her, I bet you've made $1 million with that as well, haven't you? She says, oh yeah, multi-millions probably. So it's one of those models that allows you to truly scale where you're able to support 30, 40, 50 clients all at the same time without needing to get on 50 hours of calls every week. And who has time for that, frankly? So you're able to help more people. And the other interesting thing about these coaching businesses that often makes us feel quite unsafe in our own businesses and financially worried about what next month looks like is that typically we don't have consistent income come in unless either we have an evergreen business set up where we know there's going to be clients coming in next month just based on our data, or we have monthly recurring revenue coming in from payment plans. And an evergreen high ticket group coaching program gives you both, which then makes you feel a lot safer, at least financially, That's not to say that money gives you safety. That's got to come from within you, but it does give you a starting point when it comes to be able to predict the business and then hire team members to support you and really scale from there. Unfortunately, what happens with a lot of coaches, both of us see, is they're dependent on launches to bring in 100K in one go, and they're living off that for a good few months, and they have to launch again. And if the launch doesn't go well the second or third time round, they're then in very hot water financially. And it's a scary business to be running when you're in that place.
Yeah, that is incredibly true. And I love the way that you blend the kind of inspiration part, but with real CEO mindset stuff here. And I know, your background in the management consultancy, stuff that you used to do, put you in a really good position to do that. It's interesting because I see with the people I work with quite often, they'll come out of corporate and they'll bring a piece of that skill into their business really, really fast, and they run with it and start to make some decent money and hit their first 100K or whatever that might be, but then suddenly find that they're no longer lit up and they've got these thoughts of want to burn it to the ground, or they're getting burnt out, or they're just questioning what exactly they went into this for in the first place. Did you ever go through that transition at any point?
I did, and that was typically initiated by the type of client I was working with, where getting on group calls or one-on-one calls just felt like was pulling teeth. And I think that's a really strong indication. It's like a symptom of where your messaging and what you're doing in your business is just not aligned with what you're meant to be doing. And we see that happen a lot, even at a multi-6, sometimes 7-figure level, where it's really not lighting up that coach anymore. So yeah, absolutely, it was there for me. Now, what often, as you said, happens is people want to burn this thing to the ground and start all over again. Actually, that's like a very long way around of getting where you want to go. I found a lot faster way to go there, which is to iterate on what you already have. So there's going to be parts of what you're doing right now that is working, but you need to figure out what that is, and then you need to figure out the gaps and then refine the messaging or the brand position, the type of client that you're calling in, the way you're running the business, to then up a level into something that you really, really adore. And a really easy example to share on that is I've been running my Freedom Accelerator program now for 2.5 years, I believe. I've been running it Evergreen for 2.5 years, but the type of client that came in at the beginning and the type of client I attract now, wildly different. And I haven't stopped and started that program. We've just iterated and upgraded on what we're doing to get it better and better and better and better. That's, I find, a lot easier than reinventing the wheel from scratch every time.
It's often an energetic upgrade as well, which I'm well aware of in my work. And similarly, as I elevated my aspirations for who I wanted to work with, and I'd gone through my own brand epics process and dialed that in, I realized that it was me that made the difference, not just what I was teaching and not just the program contents. That was an important part of it. And we both agree that excellence is essential. We wouldn't do it otherwise. But who you are and who you show up as makes an enormous difference in the magnetizing of specific desired soul clients. And I know that you have really dialed into that energetic piece. And you alluded to it earlier, saying that obviously that success is about the trauma work and the energetics. Are you happy to share a little bit of that journey with us?
Oh, yes. This is like the literal game changer. So where do I start with this? So I'll be really clear with the fact that I did not have a traumatic childhood. I had a lovely childhood. Parents are still together. We traveled. We had a lovely time. However, there were still things that my parents and teachers at school as well said to me that traumatized me in the most minor of ways, but had a huge impact on me as an adult. So we all have them, even if you had a beautiful childhood, because children take things the wrong way without them really realizing they're doing it. So I had to go back to those memories, where those memories were when I was just 3 years old or 4 years old, often before the age of 7, and go and rewrite the beliefs that I formed and the emotions that I had at the time, to stop me getting triggered by my business, to stop me getting triggered by my clients, to allow me to feel safe within myself. And it's an interesting thing you said a moment ago about magnetizing. And we often hear messaging online about how to be magnetic to clients and how to be magnetizing. Actually, I think a key part of being magnetizing is you being a safe person for people to be around. And by you being, for you to be a safe person for people to be around, you've got to be safe for yourself. So if you are, let's say, giving various like negative self-talk to yourself that's not you being safe for yourself. Or if you're making promises to yourself and then not implementing on those promises or not keeping your own promises, you're therefore not being a safe container for yourself. So there's various ways in which we erode our own self-trust as entrepreneurs. That then gives off in our energy. So then when it comes to somebody investing a high amount of money with us, 15K, 20K, whatever it might be, and you're on a sales call with them, if you're not giving off an energy of safety for them, they're not going to feel safe handing over the money. So there's some really interesting nuance here that is an absolute game changer when we want to sell high ticket. And it comes down to safety a lot of the time for ourselves.
And what difference did it make in your business when you started on that journey and you made the commitment to yourself to go back into those childhood stories and start to transmute them? What allowed you to see that this was the work you needed to do, not another strategy, not another launch or whatever it might have been at the time?
So this is like a really clear memory for me. It was August a couple of years ago, and I was in the middle of a launch, and I had somebody, a really big influencer in the industry, put various things up on her social media calling me out for using the same trademark name that she had for her program. I never heard of the woman, never heard of her program before, but she took it upon herself to bully me online. And I was waking up to trolls on my Instagram account every morning. So for about 72 hours, I was in really horrendous fight or flight. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was cold and sweaty the entire time. It was a really awful couple of days. And you'd think that would be the thing that I would then right, if this is triggering me that bad, I need to go heal myself. But even that didn't allow me to think, oh, I need to go work on my inner world here because my business is triggering me this bad. It was actually a week later where I had a client inside my group coaching program that for whatever reason, I felt like I wasn't being good enough for. So I was telling myself a story that she has really high standards. She's similar to me, I have really high standards, but I'm just not meeting her standards. I feel like I'm disappointing her. I don't think she's having a good time. All of this really negative self-talk. Turns out the following week, she'd gone and referred her friend to the program. It's like, whoa, okay. So if she's gone and done that, all the story that's been going through my head is complete and utter BS. So there's obviously some beliefs and emotions in me that's telling me that story. And if I keep telling myself these stories, I'm going to just hate my business and I'm not going to grow. And it's going to be a really, really hard climb for 7 figures. So we need to go sort the stories out. And so I ended up working with a lady who allowed me to go deep into these memories and really clear them. And then that comes out later in how you show up in the world because you feel safe within yourself, you feel safe within the world. And you also, I experienced so much more joy because I was no longer being held down. I felt like, you have those images of like carrying sacks of shit up the hill. I was literally carrying all these sacks and it wasn't fun and it was hard work. And of course you can make 7 figures by carrying your sacks, but it's going to be a long, long time to get there. And I wanted to just drop the sacks and run up the hill. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head that so many of us go through this efforting and over pushing and over proving and believing that it has to be hard and swimming against the current because that's what we think we have to do, particularly us as corporates and, high achievers. When the reality is that when we can remove those limiting beliefs in whatever way is right for us, suddenly we can show up in an entirely different way. So tell me, after you started that work, what were the big 3D in reality shifts that happened within your life or particularly in your business?
Yeah. So there was 1 month, which was kind of funny. We did nothing different to the funnel and ads were the same. I didn't tweak anything. The strategy was crystal clear, exactly the same. And we went from having something like a 30K month to it was over 200K in sales value the following month. Because we were basically, my coach and I were playing with the energy of like, let's keep everything the same and just see what happens when we do energy as the strategy. And it blew up to the point at which I basically had to slow it down a little bit and turn the ads off because it was a bit much. So yeah, you can really see it financially, but also you can see it in the way that I feel about my business and the way I show up and the safety I feel and the joy that I feel. And I mean, I have parents who run really successful businesses, but they don't feel joyful. And I never wanted to experience that. I wanted to always feel good as well as build a successful business. So I feel really grateful that I've been able to create that. And just going back to the fact that these can be really, really small things that we're holding on to. One of the biggest memories that was holding me back that I didn't even realize until I was down in almost like a trance, not quite, but like down in that work, was something my dad said to me at the age of about 6 years old when I came home from school with my very first result from a test, really happy with myself, got 90% or something. And he turns around and said, well, what happened to the other 10%? So then for me at the time, this is obviously a classic dad thing, classic parent thing to say. For me at the time, I made the belief that nothing I do is quite good enough. And therefore I'm not good enough. And I swear all of us have that kind of belief on some level somewhere. And it really holds us back in our businesses on so many levels. So yeah, go and do that inner work if you haven't already, people.
So true. I had a similar experience. I did a little bit of work with a past life regression expert and also through breath work and revisiting my inner child. And I realized that when I was 2 years old and my mum was nursing my sister, that I took on the belief that I was all alone and only I could support myself. It was all down to me. And what kind of message is that? Here I am in my 40s and I believe that I have to do it all. No one will do it as well as I do. And again, I had the same belief that when I gave birth to my first daughter and it all went horribly wrong and I ended up in intensive care and nearly dying, this big trauma with a big T, and PTSD came out of that. I again came up with a story that only I could have saved myself. Like I couldn't trust my then husband or the nurses or the midwives. I had to do it. And obviously I didn't, like it had gone wrong. And revisiting that only happened because I'm an entrepreneur. Like because I'm now in this world, a world I adore, a world of energy and impact, that I actually get to do the healing work that probably should have happened 20 plus years ago. So
it's so true. Entrepreneurship is just one big personal development journey with a bit of money making attached if you're any good at it.
Absolutely. And that's why I love the work that I do, because as people start to integrate more of this learning into their own lives, they're starting to change what they wish to produce and how they want to show up and add value. And it's becoming more and more common that these entrepreneurs who are coming out of their corporate mindset and they've built big businesses, but now they've done energy work, they've done mindset work, subconscious reprogramming, and now they want to be that person. But that's a bit of a shift. And that takes another up level to now teach something that you might not perceive you're the expert in yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head, even at that stage, but it happens. It really does.
I mean, I've seen you just move forward into each new venture, into each new experience and opportunity with such ease and such kind of expectation in a way. You don't seem to enter into any new venture, even a trip to Necker where you're the youngest kid on the block and everyone's been there longer, done it more, whatever it might look like, with such a relaxed ease about it. Where do you think this comes from and how do we get a slice?
Oh, good question. Yeah. And what really blew me away about Necker is I actually didn't feel like an imposter there. And part of me was expecting to feel like that, but I didn't. And the thing that really blew my mind was that the day we got on the speedboats over to Necker, we'd spent a couple of days on another island previously masterminding. And over lunchtime, a couple of the ladies asked me, could you teach us some things about Evergreen? I said, yeah, cool. Let's all gather at lunch. And a couple of them came and I thought, we'll just have 3 or 4 came and come, and 15 of them turned up. And I was literally sitting there teaching them evergreen marketing. I was the only one there apparently that could teach this, but there we go. It was wild. And part of me was very much like, of course that was going to happen. And I didn't worry about it. And I think the secret sauce, if I was trying to put my finger on it, would be really, really large amounts of self-trust. And if you can't trust yourself, you would really struggle to be a successful entrepreneur. And we've had various experiences over our lifetime which would have eroded our self-trust, whether that is just going back to what I said earlier about not keeping promises to yourself or being really negative in your self-talk, or whether you've made decisions in the past and investment decisions in your business and they haven't paid off, that can erode your self-trust if you allow it. So being able to trust your decisions, to trust you're going to show up in a way that feels good and trust that everything's going to work out fine. It can be scary to do that because it actually requires you to release control. And I used to be massive type A control freak, controlling everything because it helped me feel safe. Actually, it doesn't help me feel safe. It's like a sticking plaster on the situation. So yeah, I'd say self-trust is the other thing. And then the other piece that I use to manage my brain along the day, along the weeks when big things come up, is every time I feel like I am in resistance, or I get stuck, or I'm scared, or is an emotion blocking me, you probably heard me say this a gazillion times over the last year, Jo, but I get a pen and paper and I literally write it out. There's so much self-coaching that has to be done as an entrepreneur. And the beauty is, because if you're listening to this, you probably are a coach, you know how to do that. But then the question becomes, are you walking your own talk when it comes to being able to self-coach? And a lot of coaches aren't. So the quicker you can get back into an alignment with your own craft, actually the faster your business will grow anyway. So I'd be journaling stuff out, getting the thoughts out on paper and rewriting them in my head. And that's just a really practical thing that's worth considering as well if you're finding yourself getting really blocked.
Yeah, I love that. And it's making me think a little bit about some of the blocks that people have and the stories that they tell themselves. And I want to just circle back to something you said almost at the beginning about audience size. And I know I come across so many people who say, I just haven't got the audience. And clearly, if you're going to try and sell a $90 course, that is going to be a big problem. We talk about high ticket. Being a coach that doesn't have a clear, large place that they sort of broadcast in isn't necessarily a barrier. And I remember coming across you at the time. I think my first contact with you would have been one of your Facebook ads, one of your funnels. I saw your fantastic Evergreen masterclass and I was sold after that. But I remember looking at you on Instagram, and I know you've grown a little bit since, but I was like, huh? And I'll tell you, anybody listening, go check Rose's Instagram out, but it's a moderate sized account. Yeah. And yet you've just made £1 million cash this year, which just goes to show that looking at someone's Instagram size or similar has no bearing on really how successful they are or the level of their expertise.
Yeah, it's such a load of BS, right? Audience size for determining whether anybody's any good at being a coach or how much revenue they're making. I've worked with clients previously that have had 100,000 followers on their Instagram and they're only making 5K a month. Like, wow, gosh, that's not what I expect at all. But there's a difference between knowing how to grow an audience and knowing how to monetize an audience. And I think what we've got really good at is monetizing our audience in my business. And we do that a lot through intimacy. I'm willing to go and talk to people in the DMs. I'm willing to build relationships. I'm willing to really nurture our community. And that allows us to then monetize the audience so much more powerfully than just simply going for numbers.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. And I know you do a lot of work on that Instagram DM piece. I was curious about this because, as you know, Rose, that isn't something that is as natural to me. I love connection. I love that intimacy. But the DM piece is something that a lot of us get like, what exactly do I say? Yeah. And what are the things that people on the receiving end just feel so warm towards someone? Because there's a lot of sleazy stuff going on in the cold DM area at the moment. Yeah. What's the difference between that and what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I was trying and erroring the DM thing for years. It was painful, so painful at the beginning. I pretty much face planted at least 300 conversations before getting anywhere with DM selling. And what I then cracked the code on, I suppose, is instead of cold outreach, we have inbound leads all of the time. So we have between 2 and 7 leads message us every single day right now when we implement the things I know work in the business. Sometimes we dial it down depending on how fast we want to go that month. But when you have an inbound lead come in, it's an entirely different conversation. And instead, your role as the entrepreneur, as the coach, is to figure out, are they somebody you can help? Or do you need to literally refer them to somebody else? And you're qualifying them, and then you might jump on a call with them. You might share a VSL or something to convert them, depending on how expensive the actual program is that you're selling. And it's a beautiful process now. I absolutely love it because it really feels like service because they're coming in to inquire about the details of what you're offering. So it's a really, really amazing process to truly master. And a lot of people really struggle with it because basically it's sales at the end of the day. And that can really bring up a lot of crap for people when it comes to sales.
Oh my goodness, it sure does. I mean, it's a whole other mindset piece to actually start monetizing. And so many amazing coaches fall into that trap of being amazing coaches, but very poor salespeople. Yeah. And consequently, they get to a place where the business might be unsustainable and they just can't move forward. So to have that way of accessing conversations that are intimate and matter is a completely different way of selling.
Yeah, it really is. It's a beautiful way of selling, and a voice note goes a long way, I have to say, in the DMs.
I agree with you, actually. Like, hearing a voice is transformative in how the conversation goes. And look, while I got you, I'm going to ask you another quiz question, just something that I know is a real sticking point, because I don't want anyone to leave this conversation not having understood the power of Evergreen. And one of the things that a lot of people fear is not having a group, not enough people to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're new to Evergreen, you're setting up a group that's going to be there forever, or a long, long time, and you fear that you might only have one person in or two people in it. How do you help people overcome that? What's the route through?
So it's amazing when you sell one person into your group, because you then go from having never sold that offer to having sold it. You've broken the seal. Great. You've got one person in there. You've proven that this thing sells. And then you got to go find your one person some friends. And when I first started my Freedom Accelerator, my group coaching program, we had 3 people sign up. It's a little ditty group. And I think on the first call, the time zone got funked up with somebody. And we had just 2 people on the call. So we were even smaller at that point. But you know what? I didn't care. And I loved it, because I knew I was evergreen. It meant I could sign another client next week. It took 2 weeks then to sign the 4th client. And then for a run of 9 weeks straight, we signed 1 new client every week, because we were evergreen. So it actually takes the pressure off. Even if you only sign one person to begin with, you'll find them a second one, a friend in a few weeks' time when you're evergreen. And it really takes the pressure off then.
Okay, so I'm going to summarize how I see that, which is in a bit of a soulful way, which is show up and show the universe that you mean it, put the energy out there, and trust that that is now going to expand and it's going to become, it will be your reality. Okay, second question, which takes this from a different angle. You talk about scaling a group program, and I know that you hold space for many people in your group program, but for many, the thought of having 10, 20, 50, more than in their group triggers a fear of success, a fear of responsibility, a fear of having to double the efforting, which then leads to burnout and all the things that a lot of high achieving coaches have playing in their heads that keeps them playing small. So what for you enables you to hold that space for 50 women, both practically and emotionally? What's the differential that allows you to scale in that way?
There's so much I could say about this. This is such a great question. So honestly, I didn't feel the difference between having 15 women inside the program and having 45 inside the program. That jump, it was a slow jump. It took us a few months, because I like to grow things step by step. There wasn't much of a difference for me. So I think step number 1 would be to do it bit by bit by bit. And before you know it, you've got 45, 50 in there. You're like, oh, how did that happen? Interesting. Because your brain has got used to the idea when you're assigning 1 new person a week, you onboard them, you get to know them, they go into the group, and it's just like a really natural flow. And the second thing is this responsibility piece, is what you just mentioned. Often as coaches, we will take responsibility for things that aren't ours. I actually see this a lot, particularly in mothers, because I feel like I'm not a mother right now, but mothers are really great at taking responsibility for the kids, because they've got to, right? That's their role. So then when we sign clients, we kind of treat them subconsciously like they're the children, and we're taking responsibility for them again. And actually, in my head, in my eyes at least, my clients already are deeply powerful women who can take responsibility for themselves. They don't need me to mother them or to, basically take responsibility for them. And instead, I see it as they get to access me and my brain and my expertise and the community around them to support them in their growth. I'm not responsible for their results. And so on a really practical level, one thing I did do when I was getting blocked around this, because hey, I have experienced this too, is literally get a piece of paper and a pen out. Again, seems to be the problem, solution to all my problems. And one side of the page, right, what am I responsible for? The other side of the page, what are they responsible for? And then realize I was taking responsibility for things that are actually theirs. So that created a bit of freedom for me as well. And ultimately, when you're leading a group, it's not just you that's going to help people get results. I find a lot of the ladies, and you've probably experienced this already inside the accelerator, connect with each other and support each other there, like that as well. Now, my responsibility is curating that community. It's not making you all connect with each other, it's curating the community so that when you do connect with each other, you're connecting with people that you vibe with on some level. So again, I'm not responsible for some of it, but I am for others. So yeah, really working out where your responsibility actually lies is very powerful, and seeing your clients as deeply powerful humans and always seeing them as that, even when they doubt themselves, will allow you to push them forwards without needing to drag them, if that makes sense.
I've just taken a pause on that because I'm letting it settle, because what you've said is incredibly powerful. And I was having a conversation with a coach just this morning about how when we level up anxieties around servicing our clients and what they might be thinking and taking responsibility, no wonder scaling, growing, having more impact, more income becomes something that we block for ourselves. And hearing you stand in your power and describe your perspective on it gives a real insight into how you've been able to scale and grow and serve more and build your business. And at the same time, have one of the most amazing personal years that anybody could expect. And like, before I wrap this one up, and I could talk for hours, give us a bit of a burst about what this year has brought you personally.
It's been mad. So this year I have moved country to Portugal full time. I got married to my husband. We've been together for 10 years. Obviously went on a little bit of a honeymoon as well. We traveled to more countries than I can possibly count, basically traveled almost every month on average. Launched a new podcast called Grow to CEO. Led a live event in Los Angeles with 4 mastermind sisters. That was in April. I've led a client retreat for the first time ever in my life, about to do the next one next week, which I'm really excited about. And obviously hit the million mark. Went to Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson. I mean, it's endless. A massive 30th birthday party where a lot of you came, a lot of clients came, and your partners as well, which was amazing. And so much more on top of that, I'm almost forgetting at this point. It's been a huge year. And it hasn't felt like I've worked really hard. It's felt really fun and flowy and easy. And yes, I have team to help me. We've even relocated the business to another country. And oh my goodness, is that a whole lot of admin, let alone the visa process. So there's been a lot of work that's happened in the background that people haven't seen to be able to make what we were doing happen. So yeah, it's been a huge year of success and I'm really thrilled about it. I've also spoken on stages that I wasn't even expecting to get on. I'm currently writing a book. And there's more to come from here as well, even more to come. There'll be a second business next year and more speaking gigs and more fun. So yeah, it's been an absolute thrill. It really has. And I adore it. I adore every minute of it, to be honest. And I have to pinch myself often sometimes because it's not like I've grown the business and my relationships have fallen apart, or I've grown the business and my health has fallen apart. It's all been able to grow together, which I think is quite unusual, but also 100% available to you if that's what you desire. So yeah, it's been a fun year and I can't wait to see what happens next year now.
Me too. Congratulations, Rose. It's been absolutely amazing to watch your growth. And I always love to end Goals with Soul with an invitation to my guests to share a small piece of inspired action that anyone listening could do in a day. And there's so many directions you can go. But what could be a way that someone's been so inspired by the ease and the way that you've created and crafted this $1 million business? What could be a small step that someone could take today?
Please go and turn some of your favorite music on and dance around the house like a lunatic, because it will shift your energy like nothing else. And you will create and be inspired from a completely different place if you just allow yourself to do that. If you can do it every day, even better. But it's one of my favorite things to do.
And what's on the Rose Radford playlist?
Anything that has like the word dance in it on Spotify playlists.
Gonna keep it easy. Just anything that Spotify throws at you with a good beat. Done. Yeah. I love that answer. Rose, thank you so much. And if somebody wants to discover a little bit more about what you do, where's the best place to find you online?
So Instagram is my usual haunt. I am Rose Radford. If you are a podcast listener, which if you are listening to this, you will be, go and check out Grow to CEO. And then the third place, if you wanted to learn more about Evergreen, would be to head to roseradford.com/stepup, because you'll be able to access my free training on how to go evergreen with your group coaching program.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rose.
Thank you for having me.
My big thanks to Rose. And before you go and play your favourite tune and have that dance around, which I'm definitely going to be doing next, I would love to invite you, if you haven't already, to apply for my magnetic messaging assessment. It's an invitation to have my eyes on your messaging, to find out where the gaps are, where your dissonance lies, and to bring you in full energetic alignment with your messaging so you can rise to your next level, elevate your brand, magnetize and attract the soul-aligned clients that are meant to work with you, and find more joy in your business than you have probably had in months. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for the magnetic messaging assessment. Just fill in that form, apply, and I will give you personal feedback on how you can improve your messaging. And so to your inspired action this week. Take care. Bye now.